Yo, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another In the OT podcast for BetHubb Sports Blog.com. I am your host, Chad M., and today we're going to talk about the absolutely miraculous run the Los Angeles Kings had en route to winning their franchise's first Stanley Cup last night after absolutely throttling the New Jersey Devils, who also deserve a ton of credit for their great season as well. They made it a bit of a series, having won games 4 and 5 to force the game 6, put a little more pressure on them, but we all knew at the end of the day when they got up 3-0, it was just a matter of time before they closed them out based on how well the Kings have been playing in the playoffs up until that little bit of a hurdle they had to overcome. And it really is just absolutely incredible when you think back to where this team was halfway through the season or even going into the playoffs. They became the first number 8 seed in the history of the NHL to win the Stanley Cup and the first number 8 seed in all of major professional sports in North America to accomplish this feat. Obviously, in baseball and football, they don't have 8 seeds because less teams make the playoffs, and it's never happened in basketball. And that just proves how crazy of a year it was for them to go this far. And it's not like they just squeaked by here and were winning series in 7 games and having to rely to win all these 1-goal games in overtime. We are talking about a team that had one of the most dominating runs in the history of the sport, which is what has absolutely blown my mind throughout the entire duration of the playoffs. Almost every single time when you see teams upsetting and being underdogs, most of the time it generally happens because they're winning a lot of close games. They're grinding it out. They're having a lot of bounces go their way. But you can't really say that was the case with this Kings team. They dominated every single team they played. And maybe I believe that after winning the first 2 rounds after knocking off Vancouver and St. Louis, many people realized that they weren't really an underdog. After all, the odds makers made them fairly hefty favorites against Phoenix in the Western Conference Finals and the New Jersey Devils in the finals. And I think that basically meant that we finally knew this team was playing up to the talent level and the expectation that so many hockey prognosticators, including myself prior to the year, thought that they were capable of playing at. Because when you look at them from a pure talent standpoint on the roster, nobody would have ever imagined this team fighting to make the playoffs and barely sneaking in there. We all thought that they had the skill set when you looked at Jonathan Quick and net, Drew Doughty anchoring the back end with all those veteran defensemen, stay-at-home guys like Willie Mitchell, Rob Scuderi, Matt Green, and then the youngsters Voynov and Martinez coming up. You saw the forwards up front, the youth of a Kopitar, a Brown, bringing in someone like Richards, Williams the veteran, and the grinding role players like Jarrett Stoll, and then they go out there and they bring in someone like Jeff Carter. So nobody could have ever thought from a pure talent standpoint that this was a huge upset. It was just more based on the fact that they were the number 8 seed. And it just seemed that they got everything clicking at the right time came the playoffs. A lot of credit needs to be given to Daryl Sutter, who did a miraculous job coming in halfway through the year and changing the culture of this team, because when you look at what they did in the regular season under him, it really wasn't all that special. It's almost like he just sort of put them in the position to be ready for the playoffs and go on this run. And, it's not like they were just an 8 seed that snuck in the last day. They did have a playoff spot clinched with a week left, and they could have finished as high as the number 3 seed, as there really was only 1 point between first in their division and third place. So we're not going to get too caught up in that with them barely making it from that perspective. But either way, anytime, you are an underdog as big as they were heading into the playoffs, it really is special. And like I said, you just don't see this kind of domination in the sport of hockey, and let alone it coming from a lower-ranked team like they were. And especially the road victories. That's what was so impressive about it. They set the record for the most all-time wins in a row on the road. And this even beats out some of the greatest dynasties we've ever seen in the sport of hockey, whether it's the early 80s Islanders, the late to mid 80s Oilers, the 70s Montreal Canadiens, the Bruins, any of those teams. None of them were able to ever string together that many road victories. So that's what makes it a great year for this Kings team here, and very deserving at BetHubbSportsBlog.com here. We send out our congratulations to them. It's going to be interesting to see if they can build on that and get a little bit of momentum moving into next season. We know how difficult it is to repeat in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Even winning the first round the next year seems to be a difficult accomplishment for teams that have made it to the finals. We know they have the talent there. It's not going anywhere. A lot of times it just comes to motivation, down to motivation, the next year and really being into it. And we've seen, obviously, this team has underachieved at points based on their talent, so it wouldn't shock anybody if they screwed around next year and didn't go on quite the run that they did. But that wraps up the 2011-12 NHL season. I know a lot of people were probably saying the Cup Finals was boring. It got a little bit boring in the Conference Finals. I still enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good. The first round in particular was fantastic hockey, and we look forward to an offseason where hopefully Gary Bettman and the players' unions can all get their heads out of their asses and get this CBA dealt with, because it'd be an absolute shame for them to have the third lockout in the last 15 years because they just can't seem to figure it out, and it seems like it's just repetitive issues coming up again and again. We'll put that aside for now and deal with it when the time is more appropriate.